Humanity watched helplessly, numb with shock and terror, as the Arcturian ships rained down devastating plasma fire from the sky, vaporizing entire cities in mere seconds, with London, Tokyo, and New York turned to craters of ash and ruin within the first hours of the ruthless alien assault. What remained of Earth's governments fractured and collapsed, and from the smoldering wreckage rose hardened resistance fighters like Jesse Coleman, an ex-Navy SEAL, whose hideout in Chicago got obliterated by screeching Arcturian dropships. Jesse, gritting his teeth through the pain of shrapnel wounds, managed to escape the fiery remains of his shelter. He looked upon the alien-raised landscape, and a primal human fury awoke deep in his gut. Despite the destruction, despite the enslavement of humanity, despite the stripping of Earth's resources by these Arcturian demons, Jesse Coleman muttered to himself, and any humans in earshot, the bold, aggressive warning cry that would become the resistance rallying call. The humans were beaten and broken, yes, but they were not done. Not by a fucking long shot. He gathered up the grim human survivors from the ruins, weapons bristling, eyes hard with a furious, almost zealous light. The Arcturians thought the conquest of Earth was complete, thought the vestiges of free humanity would wither and expire on the blasted hellscape they had made, but Jesse had a different fate in mind. Like a man possessed, he whipped the ragged band of humans into a ferocious army, teaching them advanced combat tactics, survival skills, and guerrilla warfare techniques from his SEAL days. Day after day he drilled them, harder and more brutal each time, focused on a singular goal, destroying the Arcturian overlords, especially their sadistic warlord Prylar, and taking back the Earth for humanity. Somehow, someway, they would find a weakness in the aliens' armor. Somehow they would make these alien bastards pay. Even if they all died in the attempt, humanity would show the universe that they would not go gently into oblivion. If this was to be their end, they would make it such an end as to be worthy of remembrance. The hum of Arcturian plasma rifles charging filled the night air as Jesse Coleman crept through the ruins of the old city center, his ragtag band of resistance fighters following close behind. Sweat dripped down Jesse's brow in the oppressive heat, stinging a still-healing shrapnel wound, but he ignored the pain. There was a mission at hand, raiding the nearby Arcturian supply depot for much-needed weapons and ammunition. The survival of the resistance hinged on this operation. As they approached the perimeter fence, a familiar face emerged from the shadows, flanked by a group of human soldiers. Jesse recognized him immediately, Marcus Reeves, his old comrade from the SEAL days. But the cold, hardened look in Marcus's eyes told Jesse everything he needed to know. His friend was no longer a friend, but a collaborator. "Jesse Coleman, I knew you'd come skulking around here eventually," Marcus called out, his rifle trained on Jesse's chest. "You're on the wrong side of this fight. The Arcturians are offering amnesty to anyone who helps them put down this little rebellion of yours. I suggest you take it." Jesse's jaw clenched, rage boiling up inside him at the betrayal. "I'd rather die than betray my own species, Marcus. Looks like you didn't get that memo." With a roar of fury, Jesse charged at Marcus, knocking his rifle aside as he tackled him to the ground. The two men grappled in the dirt, trading brutal blows in a vicious hand-to-hand brawl as the rest of the resistance fighters clashed with the collaborators around them. Jesse channeled every ounce of his anger and betrayal into each punch, finally overpowering Marcus and pinning him to the ground, bloodied and beaten. "Round up the rest of these traitors," Jesse spat, hauling Marcus to his feet. "We're taking the depot." With the collaborators subdued, Jesse and his team stormed the supply depot, swiftly overtaking the Arcturian guards and loading up on weapons, ammo, and other essential gear. But as they prepared to make their escape, the roar of dropship engines filled the air. Prylar's elite guard had arrived. Plasma fire rained down around them as Jesse and his fighters desperately fought their way to the extraction point. In the chaos of the firefight, a heart-stopping cry pierced the air. Mike Donovan, Jesse's best friend and second in command, crumpled to the ground, a searing plasma burn in his chest. Jesse rushed to his side, cradling Mike's head in his lap as the life drained from his eyes. "Leave me," Mike gasped, blood bubbling from his lips. Get the others out. Don't let this be for nothing. Tears streamed down Jesse's face as he looked up at the approaching Arcturian forces, then back at his dying friend. The hardest choice of his life lay before him: stay and risk the lives of his entire team, or leave his brother in arms behind. With a soul-rending cry of anguish, Jesse made the call. "Fall back! Everyone fall back now!" As the resistance fighters retreated into the night, Jesse held Mike's gaze until the end, a silent promise passing between them. Prylar would pay for this. He would pay for every human life snuffed out by Arcturian cruelty. Jesse would make sure of it, even if it was the last thing he ever did. Back at the hidden resistance base, as the fighters tended to their wounds and took stock of their newly acquired supplies, Jesse sat in brooding silence, staring at a flickering datapad screen. A mysterious message had come through on coded channels, coordinates to a secret Arcturian facility, one that supposedly held the key to defeating their armor. It smelled like a trap, but what other choice did they have? The Arcturians had already taken everything from him. He had nothing left to lose. "Gear up," Jesse said to his assembled fighters, a cold, deadly calm settling over him. "We're going hunting." Jesse's eyes narrowed as he studied the coordinates on the datapad, the ghostly glow of the screen illuminating the grim determination etched onto his face. This was it, the intel they needed to finally strike a blow against the Arcturian bastards, but he couldn't do it alone. He turned to face the assembled resistance fighters, his gaze settling on a woman with piercing blue eyes and a shock of red hair. Dr. Lena Sokolov, a brilliant scientist who claimed to have worked on reverse engineering Arcturian tech before the invasion. Jesse had his doubts, but right now he needed every advantage he could get. "Doc, you're with me. We're going to infiltrate that facility and find out what makes their armor tick." Lena nodded, a fierce smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I've been waiting for a chance to get my hands on their tech. Let's do this." The strike team moved out under the cover of darkness, silently making their way through the rubble-strewn streets towards the secret Arcturian facility. As they approached the heavily guarded perimeter, Jesse signaled for the team to halt, his eyes scanning for any weakness in the enemy's defenses. "We go in hard and fast," he whispered, unslinging his plasma rifle. "No mercy." With a burst of speed, they breached the facility's outer defenses, gunning down the surprised Arcturian guards with ruthless efficiency. But as they pushed deeper into the complex, the true horror of what the aliens had been doing there began to reveal itself. Rows upon rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each one containing the twisted, mutilated remains of human test subjects. Jesse felt bile rising in his throat as he realized the depths of the Arcturians' depravity. They hadn't just been experimenting on humans, they had been trying to create some kind of super soldier. Amidst the nightmarish scene, a small whimper caught Jesse's attention. There, huddled in the corner of one of the labs, was a young boy, no more than 10 years old. His eyes were wide with terror, but there was something else there, too. A glimmer of defiance. "Please," the boy stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't let them take me again." Jesse knelt down beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, kid. We're here to get you out. What's your name?" Dr. Sokolov gasped as she studied the readouts on a nearby console. "Jesse, this boy, he's interfacing with the Arcturian systems somehow. It's like he can communicate with their technology." Jesse's eyes widened as the implications sank in. This kid could be the key to everything, the secret weapon they needed to finally turn the tide against the alien invaders. But before they could make their escape, a terrifyingly familiar figure emerged from the shadows, Prylar himself, flanked by his elite guard. The Arcturian warlord's eyes glowed with malevolent hunger as he fixed his gaze on Jesse. With a roar of challenge, Jesse charged at Prylar, the two leaders clashing in a brutal dance of death. Plasma fire scorched the air around them as they traded blows. Jesse's raw, primal fury pitted against Prylar's cold, calculated savagery. But even as he fought with every ounce of skill and determination he possessed, Jesse knew he was outmatched. Prylar was too strong, too fast. It was only a matter of time before the Arcturian warlord gained the upper hand. Suddenly, warning klaxons blared throughout the facility, red lights pulsing in time with the urgent wail. The self-destruct sequence had been activated. In minutes, the entire complex would be nothing but a smoldering crater. Seizing his one chance at escape, Jesse lunged for a nearby window, shattering the glass with a desperate strike of his plasma rifle. As the countdown ticked towards 0, he leapt out into the open air, the searing heat of the explosion nipping at his heels. He hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact as flaming debris rained down around him. Dragging himself to his feet, Jesse limped towards the rendezvous point, his body battered and bleeding, but his spirit unbroken. They had the boy, they had the data, and now for the first time since the invasion began they had hope. Back at the resistance base, Dr. Lena Sokolov hunched over a glowing computer screen, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she pored over the stolen Arcturian data. Lines of alien code scrolled past, illuminating her face in a ghostly blue light. She had barely slept in days, driven by a desperate need to unravel the secrets of the enemy's armor. She turned to Jesse, who stood watching intently. The Arcturians' armor is fueled by a rare energy source, one that can only be found on their homeworld. But Alex's brainwaves, they're the perfect counter-frequency. He can disrupt the energy flow, make the armor vulnerable. Jesse nodded, a grim smile spreading across his face. Then we hit them where it hurts, Prylar's fortress in DC. We take that out, and the Arcturian occupation crumbles. He gathered his team, a hardened group of resistance fighters armed to the teeth. Alex stood among them, his young face etched with a mixture of fear and determination. Jesse placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, looking him squarely in the eye. "You're the secret weapon, kid. Stay close, and when the time comes, you do your thing, got it?" Alex nodded, swallowing hard. "I won't let you down." They set out under the cover of darkness, navigating the abandoned subway tunnels that snaked beneath the ruined city. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the only light came from the flickering beams of their flashlights. As they pressed deeper into the tunnels, strange sounds began to echo off the walls, feral snarls and inhuman shrieks. Jesse signaled for the team to halt, his rifle at the ready. From the shadows, twisted shapes emerged. Once human, now something else entirely. Their skin was mottled and grey, their eyes wild with madness. The feral humans, products of the Arcturians' cruel experiments, had made the tunnels their lair. Jesse opened fire, the muzzle flash of his gun strobing in the darkness. The ferals charged, their claws and teeth bared, heedless of the bullets ripping through their flesh. One of them leapt at Alex, a razor-sharp shard of metal clutched in its gnarled fist. In that moment, Jesse understood with brutal clarity that not all of humanity was worth saving. He swung his rifle like a club, the butt of the gun connecting with the feral's skull with a sickening crunch. It crumpled to the floor, twitching spasmodically. Jesse stood over the fallen feral, his chest heaving, a new coldness in his eyes. "Move out," he ordered, his voice hard. "We can't afford to waste any more time." As they neared the fortress, a static-filled transmission crackled over their comms. Dr. Sokolov's voice, tight with fear, cut through the white noise. Jesse clenched his jaw, his mind racing. They were so close, but without Lena, they had no hope of understanding the Arcturian technology. He looked at Alex, saw the fear and trust warring in the young boy's eyes. "Change of plans," Jesse said, his voice low and urgent. "We're going to give Prylar exactly what he wants." Jesse turned to the rest of the team, a fierce light burning in his gaze. "While Prylar is focused on Alex, we go in hard and fast. We rescue the dock and we take out the fortress's defenses from the inside. This ends tonight, one way or another." He checked his rifle one last time, the click of the magazine locking into place ringing with grim finality. The plan was set, the pieces in motion. All that remained was the final desperate gambit, a last-ditch effort to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. In the eerie stillness before the storm, Jesse allowed himself a moment to think of all they had lost, all they had sacrificed to reach this point. Mike's face swam before his eyes, a silent reminder of the price of failure. No more, he vowed silently. No more friends lost, no more innocents slaughtered. Tonight they would take back their world or die trying. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the ruins of Washington, D.C. in a sickly orange glow as Jesse and Alex made their way towards Pryla's fortress, their hands raised in a show of surrender. Jesse's heart pounded in his chest, the weight of what was to come bearing down on him like a physical force. He glanced at Alex, saw the fear and determination warring in the young boy's eyes, and felt a surge of protectiveness. He would not let Pryla have him, not while he still drew breath. As they approached the towering gates of the fortress, a sudden cacophony of gunfire and explosions erupted from all around them. The resistance had launched their attack, drawing the attention of the Arcturian guards and leaving Jesse and Alex to slip inside unnoticed. They raced through the twisting corridors of the fortress, the sounds of battle raging outside. Suddenly they burst into a cavernous chamber, and there, standing at the center of the room, was Pryla himself. The Arcturian warlord held Dr. Sokolov in a cruel grip, his plasma pistol pressed against her temple. "Welcome, Jesse Coleman," Pryla sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "I see you've brought me the boy. Hand him over and I might just let your precious doctor live." Jesse stepped forward, his fists clenched at his sides. "Let her go, Pryla. This is between you and me." Pryla laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed off the walls. "You truly believe you can defeat me, human? My armor is impenetrable, my strength unmatched, but I will make you a deal. Face me in single combat. If you win, the doctor goes free. If you lose, well, I think we both know what happens then." "Or what?" Jesse nodded, his jaw set with grim determination. He knew this was a trap, that Pryla had no intention of honoring their agreement, but he had no choice. He had to buy time for Alex to get in position. The two warriors circled each other, their eyes locked in a deadly stare. Pryla moved with inhuman speed and grace, his armor glinting in the dim light. Jesse, by contrast, was all raw, primal fury, his muscles coiled and ready to strike. They clashed in a brutal display of close-quarters combat, trading blows that would have shattered bone and pulverized flesh on any ordinary human. Jesse felt the impact of each strike reverberating through his body, but he pushed through the pain, driven by a single, all-consuming thought. He had to end this here and now. But Pryla was too strong, too fast. Even with all his skill and experience, Jesse found himself being driven back, his defenses crumbling under the relentless onslaught of the Arcturians' attacks. He staggered, blood pouring from a gash above his eye, and Pryla seized the opening, hammering blow after blow into Jesse's battered body. Just as it seemed all hope was lost, a sudden, piercing scream filled the air. Alex, his face contorted with effort, had tapped into his abilities, unleashing a pulse of energy that slammed into Pryla like a physical wave. The Arcturian warlord stumbled, his armor flickering and sparking as the disruptive frequency tore through its systems. Seizing the moment, Jesse surged forward, channeling every ounce of his strength into a single devastating blow. His fist connected with Pryla's helmet, shattering the alien alloy like glass and sending the warlord crashing to the ground. Jesse stood over Pryla's prone form, his chest heaving with exertion. He reached down, ripping the shattered remains of the helmet away to reveal the alien's true face, a twisted, nightmarish visage of pallid flesh and bulging serpentine eyes. But even in defeat, Pryla was not finished. With a snarl of rage, the Arcturian leader lunged for a control panel on the wall, his clawed fingers flying over the keys. A sudden, blaring alarm filled the air, and a cold, robotic voice echoed through the chamber. Jesse's blood ran cold as he realized the enormity of what was happening. Pryla had triggered a failsafe, a last-ditch attempt to wipe out the resistance and the city along with it. He looked at Dr. Sokolov, saw the fear in her eyes, and then turned to Alex, the boy who held the key to humanity's survival. In that moment, with the seconds ticking away and the fate of the world hanging in the balance, Jesse faced an impossible choice. He could pursue Pryla, end the aliens' reign of terror once and for all, but doing so would mean abandoning his people to a fiery death. Or he could turn his back on vengeance, focus on evacuating as many survivors as possible, and live with the knowledge that Pryla had escaped justice. As the fortress shuddered and cracked under the strain of the impending detonation, Jesse's heart raced, the seconds ticking down like hammer blows to his soul. The weight of his duty, his responsibility to the human race, pressed down on him like a physical force. He locked eyes with Alex, saw the fear and trust warring in the boy's young face, and made his choice. "We have to evacuate now," Jesse shouted over the blaring alarms. "Alex, get Dr. Sokolov and as many of our people out as you can." Alex hesitated, his eyes wide. "But what about you?" Jesse gripped the boy's shoulder, his voice fierce with urgency. "I'll be right behind you, kid, but we have to move now." He burst into a collapsing chamber, plasma rifle at the ready, and came face to face with a squad of Arcturian stragglers, their armor flickering and sparking from Alex's disruptive pulse. Jesse didn't hesitate. He opened fire, the air crackling with the heat of plasma bolts, as he cut down the alien soldiers with ruthless efficiency. Smoke choked the air and rubble rained down from above as Jesse fought his way towards the exit, herding terrified civilians and wounded resistance fighters alike. Just as he caught sight of daylight streaming through the gaping maw of the fortress entrance, a piercing scream cut through the chaos. Jesse whirled, his heart in his throat, to see a young girl no more than 6 years old, trapped beneath a collapsed beam, her tear-streaked face smudged with soot and blood. In that instant, the image of his own daughter, lost to the Arcturians' cruelty, flashed before his eyes. "Go!" he roared to Alex and the other survivors. "Get them out of here!" Without waiting for a response, Jesse charged back into the depths of the fortress, dodging falling debris and gouts of flame as he raced towards the trapped child. He heaved at the fallen beam with all his strength, his muscles screaming in protest, but it wouldn't budge. The countdown echoed in his ears, a death knell tolling out the seconds he had left. With a roar of desperate fury, Jesse strained against the immovable weight, every fiber of his being focused on one singular goal, saving this one innocent life. Suddenly, miraculously, the beam shifted, just enough for Jesse to drag the sobbing child free. He gathered her into his arms and sprinted for the exit, the heat of the impending explosion searing his back. But as he neared the threshold, a massive chunk of the ceiling gave way, crashing down in a spray of rubble and sparks. Jesse skidded to a halt, his heart sinking as he realized the path was blocked. There was no way through, no time to find another route. He set the girl down, his hands gentle on her trembling shoulders. "Run," he told her, his voice calm and steady despite the fear and sorrow raging in his heart. "Don't look back. Just run." As the child fled towards the safety of the resistance lines, Jesse turned to face the oncoming inferno. He braced himself against the falling rubble, his body a living shield holding back the tide of destruction so that one more innocent soul might live. And as the fortress exploded in a blinding flash of light and heat and unbearable noise, Jesse Coleman stood tall and unafraid, a smile on his lips and peace in his heart. He had done his duty, had given his all for the cause he believed in, and as the flames consumed him, he knew that his sacrifice would not be in vain. From the distant hilltop where the evacuees huddled, Dr. Sokolov and Alex watched in numb horror as Pryla's fortress collapsed in on itself, a plume of fire and ash rising into the blood-red sky. They searched the rubble with desperate eyes, hoping against hope for some sign of Jesse, some miracle that might have spared him. But as the smoke cleared and the dust began to settle, a terrible silence fell over the survivors. Jesse Coleman, the hero of the resistance, the man who had given everything to protect the innocent and avenge the fallen, was gone. Alex felt hot tears sting his eyes, a sob building in his throat. But as he looked out over the sea of haggard, soot-stained faces around him, he saw not despair, but a fierce, unquenchable determination. These were the people Jesse had fought for, the ones he had died to save, and in their eyes Alex saw the unbreakable spirit of humanity, the will to endure and overcome, no matter the cost. Dr. Sokolov laid a hand on Alex's shoulder, her voice thick with grief but steady with resolve. "He gave us a chance," she said softly. "A chance to fight another day. We won't let his sacrifice be for nothing." As the survivors began to regroup, tending to the wounded and taking stock of their losses, Alex felt a new sense of purpose kindling in his heart. Jesse Coleman had been more than just a leader, more than a soldier. He had been a symbol of hope, a beacon of light in the darkness of Arcturian oppression. And as long as even one human drew breath, as long as the resistance lived on in the hearts and minds of the survivors, that light would never be extinguished. Jesse's legacy would endure, a rallying cry for all those who stood against tyranny and fought for the freedom of all mankind. The battle was far from over. Pryla had escaped and the Arcturians still held sway over the earth, but as Alex looked out over the grim, determined faces of his fellow survivors, he knew that the fight would go on, for Jesse, for humanity, for the future. In the days following the destruction of Pryla's fortress, a somber pall hung over the Resistance headquarters. They had struck a monumental blow against the Arcturian occupation, but the loss of Jesse Coleman weighed heavily on their hearts. Dr. Sokolov and Alex worked tirelessly, poring over every scrap of data they had gleaned from the fortress ruins, desperate for any clue that might lead them to their fallen leader. It was during one of these late-night sessions that the transmission came through, a garbled, encrypted message that took Dr. Sokolov hours to decipher. But when she did, the news it contained sent shockwaves through the Resistance. The message, sent by an unknown ally deep within Arcturian space, revealed that Jesse had somehow survived the fortress destruction, only to be captured by Pryla's forces and whisked away to a secret off-world prison. The prison's location was hidden within a treacherous asteroid belt on the fringes of the solar system, a place where no human ship had ever ventured. But the Resistance would not be deterred. Armed with this new knowledge and driven by an unshakable determination to bring their leader home, they set to work, retrofitting a small fleet of salvaged Arcturian ships with the insights gained from Alex's unique connection to the alien technology. Dr. Sokolov and Alex worked closely together, Alex's innate understanding of the Arcturian systems guiding Dr. Sokolov's brilliant engineering. The ships that emerged from their labors were unlike anything the Resistance had fielded before, sleek, powerful, and equipped with advanced cloaking technology that would allow them to slip past Arcturian sensors undetected. As the rescue team prepared to embark on their daring mission, Dr. Sokolov pulled Alex aside, her eyes shining with a fierce pride. "Your abilities are going to be the key to this whole operation, Alex. Jesse always believed in you, and so do I." Alex nodded, his young face set with a determination that belied his years. "I won't let him down, Dr. Sokolov. I won't let any of you down." The journey through the asteroid belt was harrowing, the small fleet navigating through a constantly shifting maze of tumbling rocks and debris. At any moment, a stray asteroid could smash through their hulls, ending their mission before it had even begun. Suddenly the proximity alarms blared, and the void around them lit up with the blinding flashes of plasma fire. A swarm of Arcturian fighters, led by a vengeful Pryla, had lain in wait among the asteroids, anticipating the humans' rescue attempt. The resistance ships scattered, weaving through the asteroid field as they returned fire. The Arcturian fighters were faster and more maneuverable, but the humans had Alex. Plugged into the fleet's targeting systems, the young boy's mind raced, analyzing the enemy's patterns and predicting their movements with uncanny accuracy. Under his guidance, the human ships began to pick off the Arcturian fighters one by one, slowly turning the tide of the battle. Seizing an opening, the resistance fleet pushed forward, breaking through the Arcturian lines and locking onto the prison complex's coordinates. They docked with the station under heavy fire, disembarking into a labyrinth of darkened corridors crawling with Arcturian guards. The rescue team fought their way deeper into the complex, Alex's abilities allowing them to bypass security systems and anticipate enemy positions. Finally, they reached the heavily fortified cell block where Jesse was being held. They found him slumped against the wall of his cell, his body battered and weak, but his eyes still burning with that unquenchable fire. As the team blasted open the cell door and rushed to his side, Jesse lifted his head, a smile spreading across his bloodied face. But there was no time for reunions. Alarms blared throughout the complex, and the thunder of approaching Arcturian reinforcements filled the air. The team raced back towards their ships, supporting Jesse between them. As they neared the airlock, a familiar figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking their path. Pryler, his armor still scorched from their last encounter, leveled his plasma rifle at Jesse's chest. "This ends now, human," Pryler snarled, hatred and madness burning in his eyes. Jesse pushed himself away from his comrades, standing tall despite his injuries. He met Pryler's gaze, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. And with a roar of challenge, Jesse charged forward, slamming into Pryler with the force of a human battering ram. The two enemies tumbled to the deck, locked in a brutal, desperate struggle as the prison complex shuddered and cracked around them, alarms screaming and fires raging out of control. Jesse's team could only watch in awe and terror as their leader grappled with the monstrous alien warlord, trading blows that would have shattered the bones of any ordinary human. But Jesse was no ordinary human. He was a warrior, a survivor, a man who had stared into the abyss of extinction and refused to blink. With a final titanic effort, Jesse drove his fist into Pryler's face, shattering the Arcturian's helmet and sending him crashing to the deck, blood pooling around his shattered skull. Jesse stood over his fallen foe, chest heaving, eyes blazing with the light of victory. As the alarms blared and the prison complex shook with the force of secondary explosions, Jesse Coleman and Pryler clashed in a brutal, no-holds-barred melee. Fists pounded against flesh and bone, the sounds of their battle drowned out by the crumbling infrastructure around them. Jesse's wounds screamed in protest, his body battered and bruised, but he fought on with a savage determination, fueled by the knowledge that the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Pryler's eyes glowed with a manic fury as he rained down blows upon the human resistance leader, his alien physiology granting him a strength and speed that Jesse could scarcely match. But where Pryler had raw power, Jesse had a lifetime of training and an unbreakable will. He ducked and weaved, using his smaller size and agility to his advantage, striking at the alien warlord's weak points with a precision born of desperation. In the heart of the prison complex, Alex raced against time, his mind linked with the station's failing systems. The reactor core was critical, the damage inflicted during the battle threatening to unleash a cataclysmic meltdown that would obliterate the entire asteroid belt. With sweat pouring down his face, Alex delved deeper into the Arcturian technology, his unique abilities allowing him to navigate the alien code and firewalls. "I need more time," he shouted over the comlink, his voice strained with effort. "The containment fields are failing. If I can't stabilize the reactor—" Dr. Sokolov's reply was nearly lost amidst the sounds of battle, as the rescue team fought off wave after wave of Arcturian reinforcements. "We'll hold them off as long as we can, Alex. Just keep working." In the depths of the crumbling prison, Jesse and Pryler's battle raged on, the two combatants locked in a deadly embrace. Jesse's vision swam, his lungs burning with each ragged breath, but he refused to yield. He thought of his fallen comrades, of the sacrifices they had made to bring him to this moment. He thought of the billions of lives hanging in the balance, the fate of an entire species resting on the outcome of this one brutal fight. With a roar of defiance, Jesse surged forward, catching Pryler off guard with a ferocious headbutt. The alien warlord staggered back, his helmet cracking under the impact. Jesse pressed his advantage, raining down blows with a fury that bordered on madness, driven by a single all-consuming thought. He had to end this here and now. As the two enemies grappled, the floor beneath them buckled and heaved, the station's structural integrity failing under the strain of the impending meltdown. In a moment of terrible clarity, Jesse realized what he had to do. The only way to ensure the safety of his team, to deal a crippling blow to the Arcturian forces, was to sacrifice himself and take Pryla with him into the abyss. With a final Herculean effort, Jesse wrapped his arms around the alien warlord in a crushing embrace, lifting him off his feet. Pryla thrashed and snarled, but Jesse held on with a strength born of sheer desperation, with a cry that was equal parts triumph and anguish. He hurled himself and his hated foe over the edge of the catwalk, plummeting down into the seething heart of the reactor core below. Pryla's screams of rage and terror echoed through the disintegrating structure as the two enemies vanished into the blinding light of the overloading reactor. The station shuddered and quaked, the meltdown tearing through its superstructure like a ravenous beast. "Jesse!" Dr. Sokolov cried out, her voice raw with grief as she watched the resistance leader disappear from view. But there was no time for mourning, no time for hesitation. "Alex, we have to go now." Tears streaming down his face, Alex disengaged from the station's systems, the containment fields collapsing behind him as he fled towards the waiting ship. The rescue team fell back, fighting every step of the way as the station crumbled and burned around them. They barely made it to the airlock, the heat of the meltdown searing their skin as they sealed the hatch behind them. With a roar of engines, the battered resistance ship tore free from the doomed station, racing towards the distant safety of Earth as the asteroid belt erupted in a cataclysmic explosion behind them. In the chaos of their escape, Jesse Coleman's fate remained unknown, lost amidst the fire and destruction of the alien prison. But as the resistance ship limped back to Earth, its crew battered but unbroken, they carried with them the memory of their fallen leader's sacrifice and the undying hope that his spirit would live on in the hearts of all those who continued to fight for humanity's freedom. In the smouldering ruins of the resistance base, Dr. Lena Sokolov stood tall amidst the debris, her eyes hard with determination. Jesse Coleman's sacrifice had left a void in their ranks, but they couldn't afford to falter, not with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. She gathered the survivors, their faces etched with grief and exhaustion, and laid out their path forward. "We use what we've learned from Alex's abilities," Lena said, her voice steady and clear. "We rebuild, we regroup, and we hit the Arcturians with everything we've got." The resistance fighters nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in their eyes. They set to work, salvaging what they could from the wreckage and retrofitting their weapons with the insights gained from Alex's connection to the alien technology. Days turned into weeks as the resistance toiled, their base slowly taking shape once more. But even as they grew in strength, the spectre of Jesse's loss hung heavy over them all. Alex, his young face lined with a grief beyond his years, worked tirelessly at Lena's side, pouring his heart into the Resistance's cause. It was during one of these long nights that the transmission came through, a garbled, static-filled message that sent shockwaves through the base. "Sir Coleman's alive's asteroid belt need extraction." Alex's heart leapt into his throat, a wild hope surging through his veins. He raced to Lena's quarters, bursting through the door with the news. Lena's eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and desperate longing playing across her face. "We have to go after him," Alex pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. "If there's even a chance." Lena nodded, her jaw set with grim determination. "Assemble a team, our best fighters. We leave at dawn." The journey to the asteroid belt was fraught with peril, the small resistance ship navigating through the debris field left in the wake of the prison's destruction. Alex sat at the comms, his mind reaching out to the alien systems around them, guiding the ship through the treacherous path. At last they reached the coordinates from the transmission, the twisted remains of the prison complex looming before them. The team disembarked, picking their way through the jagged metal and shattered glass, their hearts pounding with a desperate hope. It was Alex who found it, a battered escape pod half buried in the rubble. He called out to the others, his voice high and urgent, as he scrambled to the pod's hatch. With trembling hands, he wrenched it open, revealing the broken, bloodied form within. Jesse's eyes fluttered open, a weak smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Took you long enough," he rasped, his voice barely more than a whisper. As the team raced back to their ship, Jesse's broken body in tow, A sudden urgent transmission crackled over their comms. The Arcturians were on the move, a massive fleet converging on the remaining human strongholds. The final assault had begun. Back at the resistance base, Jesse lay in the infirmary, his wounds tended to by a grim-faced medic. Lena and Alex stood at his bedside, the weight of the news heavy on their shoulders. "We have to hold them off," Jesse said, struggling to sit up. "We've come too far to let them win now." Lena placed a hand on his chest, gently pushing him back down. "We will, but you need to rest. You're in no shape to fight." Jesse's eyes blazed with a fierce light, the fire of his determination unquenched by his broken body. "I'll fight as long as there's breath in my body. Earth is our home, our birthright, and we'll defend it to the last." As the resistance prepared for the coming storm, a sense of grim resolve settled over the base. This was it, the final stand, the battle that would decide the fate of humanity, and with Jesse Coleman back in their ranks, they knew they would fight to the bitter end. The Arcturian ships filled the skies, their hulls glinting in the harsh light of the sun. The resistance fighters scrambled to their posts, manning the anti-aircraft guns and preparing for the ground assault. In the command center, Jesse stood tall, his wounds bandaged but his spirit unbroken. Beside him, Dr. Sokolov and Alex pored over the tactical displays, their faces tight with concentration. "They'll try to overwhelm us with sheer numbers," Jesse said, his voice steady and calm. "We have to hold the line, no matter the cost." As the first wave of Arcturian dropships descended on the base, the resistance opened fire, the air crackling with the heat of plasma bolts. The ground shook with the impact of the alien ships, their hatches slamming open to disgorge hordes of heavily armed soldiers. Jesse raced to the front lines, his plasma rifle spitting fire as he led the charge. Beside him, Alex unleashed his abilities, the alien systems of the Arcturian weapons sparking and failing under his assault. The resistance fighters fought with a savage determination, the knowledge that they were all that stood between humanity and annihilation, driving them to feats of desperate valor. But even as they held the line, the tide of the battle began to turn against them. The Arcturians were relentless, their numbers seemingly inexhaustible. For every alien soldier that fell, 10 more took their place, pressing forward with a ruthless, machine-like efficiency. In the heart of the chaos, Jesse found himself face to face with a familiar figure. Pryler, his armor scorched and battered, but his eyes burning with an unquenchable hatred. The two enemies clashed in the midst of the battle, their struggle a microcosm of the larger war raging around them. Pryler's blows hammered against Jesse's defenses, the alien warlord's strength fueled by a rage that bordered on madness. But Jesse fought back with a ferocity born of desperation, his every strike a defiant cry against the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. In a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, Jesse saw the truth of their struggle, that this was a battle not just for the fate of humanity, but for the very soul of the galaxy itself. The Arcturians represented a twisted, corrupted vision of life, one in which the strong preyed upon the weak and the very concept of freedom was anathema. But humanity, for all its flaws and weaknesses, embodied something else. The unquenchable fire of the spirit, the will to fight and endure and make a better world, no matter the odds. In that moment, Jesse knew that he would gladly give his life to defend that ideal, to ensure that the flame of hope would never be extinguished. With a roar of defiance, he surged forward, catching Pryler off guard with a ferocious headbutt. The alien warlord staggered back, his helmet cracking under the impact. Jesse pressed his advantage, hammering blow after blow into Pryler's unprotected face, his fists fueled by a lifetime of grief and rage and unbreakable will. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. Pryler crumpled to the ground, his lifeless eyes staring up at the smoke-filled sky. Around them, the battle raged on, but in that moment, a flicker of hope kindled in Jesse's heart. They could win this, they would win this, for Earth, for humanity, for the future. With a cry of renewed determination, Jesse rallied the resistance fighters, his voice rising above the clamor of battle. "Keep them off us," Jesse roared, plasma fire lighting up the cramped confines of the stolen Arcturian ship as he and Alex raced for the mothership's looming hull. Alex gritted his teeth, interfacing with the ship's systems, his mind a whirlwind of alien code and flickering energy. The small strike team, the best of the Resistance's fighters, returned fire with grim determination, their faces illuminated by the strobing flashes of plasma bolts. The mothership's defenses lit up the void of space, a web of crackling energy that threatened to tear the stolen vessel apart. But Alex pushed through the pain, his abilities guiding them through the maelstrom, finding the gaps in the alien ship's armor. With a bone-jarring impact, they breached the mothership's hull, the twisted metal of the ship's wounded flank sealing behind them like a scab. Jesse was the first one out, his plasma rifle up and ready, scanning the eerie, pulsing corridors of the Arcturian vessel. "We move fast, hit hard. No stopping till we reach the control room," Jesse said, his voice low and tight with focus. The team moved out, a well-oiled machine of battle-hardened survivors cutting through the mothership's defenses with ruthless efficiency. But the Arcturians were ready for them. Around every corner, through every shimmering portal, the alien soldiers poured forth, their armor glinting in the sickly light of the ship's pulsing veins. Plasma fire filled the air, the stench of ozone and seared flesh choking the narrow corridors. Jesse led the charge, a man possessed, his rifle spitting death with every squeeze of the trigger. Beside him, Alex fought with a preternatural grace, his abilities guiding his every move, turning the Arcturians' own technology against them. Inch by blood-soaked inch, they pushed deeper into the mothership, the resistance fighters falling one by one, their lives spent in the desperate gambit to end the war. Finally, they reached the central control room, a cavernous chamber pulsing with malevolent energy. And there, waiting for them, was the true face of their enemy. Not Prylar, the alien warlord, but something far worse, a twisted, pulsing mass of technology and organic matter, a grotesque fusion of machine and flesh. The Overmind, the puppet master behind the Arcturians' century-long reign of terror. Jesse felt his blood run cold as the Overmind's android avatars emerged from the shadows, their faces a mockery of humanity. He glanced at Alex, saw the grim realization in the young man's eyes. They were outmatched, outnumbered. There was no way they could win this fight. But then Alex stepped forward, his face set with a terrible resolve. He looked at Jesse, a silent understanding passing between them. The only way to ensure the Overmind's destruction, to end the war once and for all, was to overload the mothership's reactor core. And the only one who could make that happen was Alex. With a final wordless nod, Alex turned to face the Overmind, his hands already wreathed in the shimmering energy of his abilities. Jesse and the remaining resistance fighters closed ranks around him, buying him the time he needed with their blood and their fury. The battle was brutal, desperate. The Overmind's avatars fought with a terrible strength, their bodies impervious to pain or fear. Jesse felt the bite of their blades, the searing agony of their plasma fire, but he fought on, his every breath a defiant roar in the face of annihilation. And then, with a blinding flash of light, it was over. Alex, his body wreathed in the shimmering energy of the mothership's reactor core, looked back at Jesse one last time, a sad smile on his young face. He knew what he had to do, knew the price he would pay. "Go," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of the overloading reactor. "Get out of here." Jesse felt the hot sting of tears in his eyes, a sob of grief and rage tearing at his throat, but he knew Alex was right. With a final, anguished look, he turned and ran, the remaining resistance fighters following close behind. They barely made it to the stolen Arcturian ship, the mothership buckling and tearing itself apart around them as the reactor went critical. As they blasted free of the dying behemoth, Jesse watched through the view screen as the alien fleet was consumed by the blast, the Overmind's destruction sending them into a frenzy of confusion and disarray. As the stolen ship limped back to Earth, Jesse felt the weight of it all pressing down on him like a physical force. The war may have been won, but the fight was far from over. In the ashes of the Arcturian civilization, new threats would arise, new challenges to be faced. But for now, in this moment, Jesse allowed himself to grieve. to feel the full measure of what had been lost and what had been saved. Earth was free, humanity would endure, and as long as he drew breath, Jesse Coleman would be there to lead them through the darkness, to honor the sacrifices of the fallen, and to build a better future from the ruins of the past. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.